It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned angler or just getting started, there's something incredibly rewarding about catching fish on a bait that you made with your own hands. In today's video, I'm gonna walk you through step by step exactly what you need to start making baits in 2024. I've been making my own baits for a long time and I've caught tons of fish on the baits that I've made myself with these two hands. If you've ever wondered about what it takes to get started in tackle making and soft plastics in particular, then you're in the right place. One thing I highly recommend is staying and watching the entire video so you can learn step by step what you need to get started. And then I'm gonna share with you some kits that you can get on the Do It Molds website that are gonna save you time and money getting into the tackle making hobby. The first thing that we need to talk about when it comes to bait making is Plastisol. That's what the baits are actually made out of. That's what's going to give you the soft plastic bait that you're trying to make. There's various types of Plastisol to choose from, but essentially you break it down into how firm you want the bait to be. Dual Molds has a soft, medium, and hard formula to choose from. I generally use the soft formula the most for my personal use, but there's times where I use the medium or hard formula. It just depends on the specific bait that I'm making. Generally, you're going to use soft formula for your worms, and you're going to use a harder formula for your craws. And a lot of times those swim baits are going to fall in the middle with those medium formulas. Now we're going to go into molds. Molds are actually what creates the form of your bait. You're going to put that Plastisol down into the mold, and once that Plastisol solidifies, you have the bait that you're trying to make. There are a ton of different molds to choose from. There's swim baits, there's craws, there's worms, there's tubes, there's creature baits. There's all kinds of different baits that you can choose from and all kinds of different molds to make those baits. My recommendation for someone just starting out is to get your first mold in a bait that you already have confidence in. If you like to throw craws, get a craw mold. If you like to throw a worm, get a worm mold. Get a mold that makes a bait that you already have confidence in. Dual Molds has two different molds to choose from. They have a CNC version and they have the Essential Series version. A CNC mold is made from aluminum and very finely finished. The Essential Series mold is made from a cast aluminum and has some texture left in the mold. The CNC version produces baits that have a very shiny appearance, and the Essential Series molds produce a more matte appearance. Some of the major appeal when it comes to these Essential Series molds is the price point, like I mentioned. The Essential Series molds come in at around $100 for a multi-cavity mold. If you're gonna get the same amount of cavities in a CNC mold, those same molds are gonna cost you around $300 to $500. So as you can see, those Essential Series molds have their place for sure. In my experience fishing baits that are made in a CNC mold and baits that are made in Essential Series molds, I don't think the fish care. I think it boils down to personal preference, what you want that bait to look like. But when it comes to the fish, I don't think they care. I think they eat both. So ultimately it boils down to whether you want that shiny look or whether you want that matte finish. I imagine a lot of people watching this video are trying to get into tackle making. They're trying to see if it's something they want to get into. So to make things as easy as possible, I've created a product list down in the video description of this video. I also included my Do It Molds affiliate link, so that way you can go to the Do It Molds website through that affiliate link, and then Do It Molds knows that I sent you. Do It Molds has everything you need when it comes to making tackle. They have the Plastisol. Everything that we're talking about in today's video, they have at their website. All I ask is you use that affiliate link so that way they know that I sent you and I can get credit for any sales. Now, the way that we get that Plastisol into the mold and create the bait is through injectors. Now, there's basically two different types of injectors. You have a single injector and you have a dual injector. A dual injector is where you can make two color baits. It's basically where you would have a green on one side and a red on the other side. You put those two together inside of the mold and you get a laminate color bait. And in order to do that, you need a dual injector. A single injector is going to be able to make you awesome looking baits still, but you're going to be limited to a single color in most situations. You're going to be making that green pumpkin, that black and blue, that June bug, but it's just going to be that one solid color throughout the whole bait. Now, dual injectors are going to be more costly than a single injector. If you can afford it, I definitely recommend getting a dual injector to start off with. Now, I don't recommend you start making two color baits to start with because they are harder to make and there's nuances to it. I still would recommend starting off with single color baits, but then you have the equipment needed as you progress and want to make those two color baits. If that dual injector is out of the price range for you to get started, I still recommend getting that 6-ounce injector so that way you get enough Plastisol in there to fill up those multi-cavity molds, and it's definitely a great way to start the soft bait making hobby. Now, if you're wondering how do we get the color of our baits. If we want a green pumpkin bait, how do we get that color in there? If we want a black and blue bait, how do we get that color in there? Well, the first step in that process is colorant. Now, Dual Molds has different types of colorant. They have their X2 colorant and they have their Essential Series colorant. Now, there's a lot of different colors to choose from. If you live around clear water, I'd recommend going with some greens, some green pumpkins, some browns. If you live in dirty water, get some blacks, get some reds, get some of those darker watercolors, maybe some orange. If you live in Florida, then you're definitely going to want to get some Junebug. The X2 colorant is very concentrated. It's a much thicker formula. The Essential Series colorant is a thinner formula, and it's going to be a little bit easier for beginners. The X2, if you put too much in there, you're going to get a much darker bait. If you go with the Essential Series colorant, it's a little bit thinner. So if you overdo it, your baits aren't going to get as dark, so it's a little bit more forgiving. So glitter is a key as well. We all have heard about that guy that says you had to have the blue glitter in the bait in order to get bit today. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But glitter is very important when it comes to making soft plastic baits. Now, Dual Molds has a bunch of different color options as well as multiple size options. Now, if you're going for a green pumpkin black flake, then obviously you're going to want to get that black. If blue's your favorite, then you want to get some blues. The size that you're going to use is just kind of dependent upon what you're going for. I'd recommend getting multiple different colors and multiple different sizes so you can kind of play around with it and customize it to specifically what you want. Now, there's some things that can go into the Plastisol in addition to that colorant and the glitter. There's salt, there's pearls, there's sinking additive, there's heat stabilizer, there's softener, and there's hardener. Now, you don't need all of these things to get started out, but I want to mention them in case they benefit you in some way. Now, salt is something that a lot of baits on the market have inside of them. I think of salt more as a way to make your bait sink, more so than the fish actually wanting to hold on to it longer. It's possible they want to do that, but I utilize salt more so for sinking than I do anything else. They also have a sinking additive that you can buy that's different than salt. It's specifically formulated for soft plastic bait making. It's ultimately personal preference whether you use salt or whether you use the sinking additive. Now, there's pearl powders that I think can be very important, but pearl powders can mess up your baits in a heartbeat. There's a lot of different pearls out there. Some of the most popular are going to be silver pearls, black pearl, blue pearl, but there's pearls for basically whatever you want to make. There's reds, there's greens, there's all kinds of different pearls. These pearls are powders, and when you add them in there, it's going to give you that shinier, pearlescent kind of color that you're going for a lot of times when you're trying to mimic bait fish. A lot of times, you know, you have that blue or that silver in those shad, and as you kind of move them around in the sun, that has that shimmer and shine on it, and that's what that pearl powder is going to do. Now, when you're using pearl powders, a little goes a long way. You're definitely going to want to start off with a very small amount and then add as needed, because you can overdo it really, really fast. So just remember, when you're using pearls, a little goes a long way. One of the additives that I would probably recommend for somebody who's just starting out in soft plastic bait making is getting some heat stabilizer. Heat stabilizer does exactly what it sounds like. It stabilizes your Plastisol as you're heating it up. It makes it less prone to getting burned. We've all burned Plastisol. It's part of the learning process. When you overheat Plastisol, it starts to yellow and it starts to get a funky smell. The heat stabilizer is going to help you minimize those times. I don't use heat stabilizer very often anymore because I've been making baits for a while, but in the beginning, it's definitely something that's going to help you to not ruin some of your cups of Plastisol. Another couple additives are softener and hardener, and they do exactly what you think they do. They're going to make your Plastisol softer, or they're going to make your Plastisol harder. In turn, that means your bait's going to be softer or your bait's going to be harder. Now, there's a few accessories that I definitely think you need to have on hand when you're starting off the bait making process. One of those is going to be gloves. This stuff is hot. You're cooking this stuff up to above 300 degrees, so you need something to protect your hands. If that Plastisol gets on you, it's going to burn you. The cups can burn you. The injectors can burn you. Everything ends up getting really hot. The molds get hot, so having a good pair of gloves is definitely something I recommend. Another thing that's a must-have is glass measuring cups. Pyrex cups, just like you would use inside the kitchen, are what you're looking for. Now, don't use the ones that are in your kitchen. Get some that are dedicated to your soft plastic bait making, so that way you're not interchanging it. I don't know if that's unhealthy or not, but in my mind, it makes sense to have dedicated measuring cups for the garage or wherever you're making those baits, so that way you're not mixing and matching what you're cooking your food with. A microwave is also something that's a must-have. You don't want to be using the microwave that you have in the kitchen just for the same reasons like I mentioned with the glass measuring cups. Getting a cheap microwave, you can get one off OfferUp or used one somewhere, or just a cheap one from the store. You don't need anything fancy. All you need is something that's going to be able to get your Plastisol up to temperature and make those baits. You don't need anything expensive. I can't remember what I paid for mine, but I have one dedicated out here for making these baits. I don't use the one in the kitchen that I'm cooking my food with. Get one that's dedicated to the bait making process, but just don't spend a lot of money on it because it's not necessary. One of the last accessories that are a must-have are clamps. I like to use heavy duty clamps. It's gonna keep that mold nice and tight together so you don't get flashing. Flashing is what happens when that Plastisol squeaks through the cavity of that mold and then comes out the sides, and you have this weird little funkiness on the outside of the bait. So you wanna have good clamps that are gonna clamp down that mold, keep everything tight, because you gotta put a little bit of pressure down inside of that mold from the injector when you're putting those baits in there in order to get everything to fill up properly, but you don't wanna overdo it and create the flashing, so those clamps definitely help you to keep that mold nice and tight and prevent that from happening. There's two other accessories that you definitely need to have. One of them is going to be a thermometer. I use an infrared thermometer. That way I can shoot that infrared laser right onto the top of the cup and get a temperature of my Plastisol so I know it's getting to the right temperature. And another thing that you're going to need is some type of utensil to stir up the Plastisol inside of that cup. I like to use just a cheap metal knife that I can get at Target or wherever, just super cheap, nothing fancy, but just something to stir up that Plastisol. Now, before we end this video, I want to talk to you about a couple of the kits that you can get on the Do It Molds website. Which one you pick is really going to boil down to price point and what you feel like you need in order to start making these baits. The first kit that we're going to talk about is the Essential Series Soft Plastic Bait Making Kit from Do It Molds. This kit's going to include 1 quart Essential Series Plastisol, 4 bottles of Essential Series Colorant, Watermelon Green, Chartreuse, Junebug, Motor Oil, 2 bottles Essential Series Glitter, Holographic Silver and Fire Red, 1 medium injector with extra nozzle, and then 25 7" by 4" bait bags. So this Essential Series starter kit comes in at 90 bucks. That's a pretty good price to get into the tackle making hobby. I want to talk to you about one more kit that's a little bit more expensive, but it gives you a lot more features and you're going to be able to tailor it a little bit more to what you specifically want. So this kit comes in at $225, but you're going to be able to tailor it to specifically what you want. You're going to be able to pick your 1 gallon of Plastisol. You're going to be able to hand pick 4 different colors of colorant, 4 different bottles of glitter. Heat stabilizer comes with it, worm oil comes with it, softener, an injector, 25 bait bags, gloves, and an extra medium injector nozzle. So if you want to get a kit that you're going to be able to tailor more to your specific needs, then maybe the soft bait starter kit is the one for you. Don't forget about my product list and Do It Molds affiliate link that is down in the description of today's video. And if you guys want to see me making baits out here in the garage, make sure to click on the video or the playlist that's on the screen right now, and I'll see you guys in the next video.